Thanks for tuning in to Men for the Win, a podcast hosted by David Kufis and Dan Thompson, two avid fans who appreciate well-played baseball, especially when it's done by the Twins. Men for the Win is sponsored by the Grand Group with Edina Realty. Are you looking to purchase a new home in the Twin Cities area? Or perhaps you're trying to sell your current home? Whether you're upsizing or downsizing, the Grand Group with Edina Realty will meet all of your housing needs. Contact the Grand Group by emailing thegran, that's G-R-A-N, group, at edinarealty.com, or call them by phone at 612-817-8751. The Grand Group with Edina Realty, 7-time Minneapolis-St. Paul Magazine Super Agent Award winners.
On this episode, David and Dan recap the Twins' 3-game series against I honestly forgot who we played, Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. Thanks for listening. Enjoy. Thanks for tuning in to Men for the Win. My name is David Kufis. With me, as always, is Dan Thompson. Dan Thompson, fresh off a solo show, which I have got to say, Dan, was one of the most pleasant listening experiences of my life. Now, there were some times, don't get me wrong, where I thought I was going to have an ulcer burst because I wanted to respond so badly. But there was no room for me to respond, Dan. It was just Dan Thompson responding to Dan Thompson.
I mean, there were some comments that I said thinking, David's not going to like this, and he's going to have some things to say about it, but he can't right then because I don't know what you were doing health-wise, but you were not clearly in a state where you were able to jump in. So I did the best I could.
It was a rough couple of days there, Dan. I have to be honest. So it wasn't just a cold. My brother called me after the podcast released, and he said, "Are you okay? I know you've done the show sick before." And I said, unless I had the recording stuff in my bathroom, there was no chance. There was no chance we were going to be able to record that episode, Dan. But thank you so much for doing that. I think Hogs is back from California. We're still not sure. He might have been eaten by a mountain lion on his Iron Man. I guess that's what he was doing out there. But a couple of notes here quick on the Royals series, just because I didn't get to participate. I will say the Twins losing the lead in Game 2 of that Royals series was suspiciously timed with my illness, Dan. And I'm not saying that the Twins playing made me sick, but I'm saying it's a possibility.
I'm not superstitious, but I am a little stitious.
Yeah, I don't know about that. And Corey Provis had to make that call, apparently, and he was doing the national. I had missed it because I was watching, but I couldn't actually listen.
Yeah, so Corey Provis is on the national call, and it just happens to be the Twins game. And I think that's got to be difficult. And he did a great job. You would not know that he was the Twins announcer. However, if you were watching the game, like, he was really up on the calls when the Royals were scoring their runs, and he made it very exciting. But it's like those comments, you know, when you want to say something, but you kind of say it under your breath after the fact. That's how Provis did his announcing, to sort of like hat tip to the Twins fans listening. And he's like really excited. Oh, and Bobby Witt Jr., brings the winning run home to score. And then, like, 2 or 3 beats later, he's like, and the Twins let this one get away again. like you can tell that he's frustrated. But on that Provis note, he's moved now. We loved him on the radio. We love him on TV, but he does college football from time to time for national broadcasts. And obviously he's doing the MLB national broadcast. Do you think he sees the Twins as just sort of a stepping stone to more national gigs? Or is it like the national gigs sort of supplement his work with the Twins? Like, is he here because he loves baseball and he loves the Twins and he wants this job? Or is he here because he wants the next thing? And I would be just so sad if he's only in the booth for, 2 years and then he's the next Joe Buck. He's better than Joe Buck. He'll be infinitely better than Joe Buck. That was a terrible comparison. He's the next Al Michaels, right? Like, that's probably a better that is a okay, do what you will. Do what you will. I realize that was just a spectrum I offered you, Dan Thompson.
Ogres are like onions.
What are you doing? Corey Provis is like Al Michaels? Oh, do you believe in miracles?
That's not a terrible comparison.
Well, so I wonder this about Corey.
You underestimate my power.
Like, is he more of a national guy? Is he Kevin Harlan? Kevin Harlan started as a Timberwolves guy, so maybe it's kind of in that vein. Is he just Chuck Knobloch or something like that? Like, just waiting for the bigger contract? I hope not. I hope he's a lifer, because a lot of these baseball guys, like, they love baseball. They love being the guy for a team for their lifetime, right? I mean, yeah. That's often like you finish your career that way.
And that's why I'm so, like, concerned. And that's a weird thing to be concerned about. But
no, it's not, because you're a Minnesotan and you're worried that all nice things leave, right?
They do, Dan. That's all I've known as a Minnesota sports fan. So a couple other notes here. I went to the game on Tuesday. I have to apologize, Dan, because last time you and I went to a game together, it was with Hogs, and there was an older couple. The wife would bring a pillow to sit on and a book to read during the game, and they moved, Dan, pretty quickly. after we sat down.
Do you think that they're listeners of the podcast and then they wanted to save the analysis for later?
Because I saw him fumbling with his phone, Dan. He's never heard what a podcast is in his entire life. He couldn't figure out how to allow MLB to have permission to his phone for only some of the time, so he couldn't figure out how to get that off.
But this is a fundamental discussion about what it means to sit at a baseball game, right? Because I go to baseball games to obviously pay attention to the baseball, but also to catch up and have other conversation as you go. I don't think baseball is one of those, it's not sacred in the sense that you can't talk through it. We're not at a movie. I mean, it's a different experience.
Well, it is. I don't know what you're talking about anymore. What I was just trying to say is I felt bad because these same people, Dan, I made move again. Within minutes of me sitting down, they were like, we're not sitting in front of this guy. No, thank you. So I'm sure you're not listeners. I apologize, though, for making you move.
Did you have a dollar dog while you were there?
No. Okay, so here's the thing. I hadn't eaten since Saturday night. So it was Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and I was so nervous to eat, and I'm going to the game on Dollar Dog night. And if you know me, Dan, I love a good hot dog.
Oh, of course.
And Dollar Dogs, are you kidding me? And you get them 2 at a time. It's great. You know, as I'm walking to the seat, you stop, you get 2. And then by the time you hit the next booth that has them, you've already got those 2 down. So you just keep moving. So for me, Dan, to take the idea that coming off this illness, the first thing I was to put into my body was a Dollar Dog, it just seemed a bit bold.
Yeah. It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
I did have 1 sip of my wife's alcoholic beverage, and a Diet Pepsi was my big splurge. And I made it home without incident. But I was so nervous, Dan, and I was so bummed because I love those Dollar Dogs.
All right. Well, we have veered to many other topics here, baseball adjacent. I think we need to go ahead and get into the recap here of this series.
Series recap.
Game 1, Dan. This was the game after the Rocco sort of blow up in the media talking about how his team was unprofessional in the Royals series. I don't know if you saw Trevor Plouffe came out sort of throwing some shade Rocco's direction about how you should really keep that, behind closed doors for the club. But Twins lose this one 6-2. Didn't really seem like they played any different than they played in the Royals series. I guess they put up a couple of runs, so there is a slight difference, I suppose.
Yeah, but Festa wasn't very good. We're going to talk about him a little bit later. The Angels starter on Sunday only went 1 inning, so the Twins had one job, just make the starter work. Just take a few pitches, just foul them off. This can't be that hard, but they had no interest in doing that. Festa gets in trouble early with a walk, and then a ground rule double, and then a 2-run RBI single, so it's 2-0 just like that. And then in the third, they add a couple more on a Brandon Drury home run. Not the start you want to be down 4-0 through 2.5 innings.
No, bottom of the third, Twins finally get one back. Michael Hellman, the savior of the team, Dan, gets a double, and then Carlos Santana knocks him in with an RBI single. But again, the Angels are up 4-1 at this point. It's still within reach. Bottom of the fourth, Kyle Farmer, going through a resurgence, I'll say, Dan, hits a solo home run. Angels are still up, but it's 4-2. But then top of the sixth, Dan, Logan O'Hoppe singles, follows by Nico Cavadas, who I like to say Avada Kedavra, every time that he comes up, but he hits a 2-run homer. Angels lead 6-2, and there ain't no way this Twins team is putting up any more runs to get above 6. Tonkin and Blewett at least finish out the game strong with no more runs allowed. But the team, Dan, again, it looked no different than it did during that Royals series.
No, but to your point, I love the names on this Angels team. They just have great names. It's Wagaman, Moniak, I think Theiss, Drury, Shanuel. These are just names out of a fantasy novel. They're just fantastic.
Moving on to game 2, this is the one I got to attend, which was fantastic, Dan. If you had to pick a Twins game to attend in the past, 20 games, this is probably the one to go to. So I was quite thankful. Twins come away with this one 10-5. The return of the sausage, Dan. And this was, if you didn't see it on Twitter, if you didn't see the 9 to 10 different articles published about the return of the sausage, I don't know where you've been.
I'm not superstitious, but I am a little stitious.
And so Kyle Farmer comes out before the game and he talks to the media and he says to them, look at that box in the dugout. I wonder what's in that box.
That's the weirdest thing. That is the weirdest thing to say to the media before the game.
It is a little bit funny, but everybody knows what's in the box, right? It's no real surprise. But Kyle Farmer, Dan, say what you will about the man. He knows how to loosen up a room. And at the end of this game, he gets interviewed and he talks about how he didn't call his shot like Babe Ruth, but he knew it was time for the rally sausage, which is maybe one of the best quotes ever.
I think what he's doing is he's auditioning to be next year's Roberto Clemente Man of the Year candidate, because I think Pablo Lopez, who had a great start in this game, I think it's solely because of the vests.
See my vest, see my vest, see my vest.
It's the Capricola Man of the Year, actually, for Kyle Farmer.
It's like a pun. It's a play on words.
Well, and this is better than Carlos Correa's nomination for the Man of the Year award last year, for goodness sake. I mean, come on, Twins.
Yes, we have gotten way off topic, Dan, here. But anyway, Pablo Lopez on the mound. Let's not bury the lead here. 7 innings pitched, 8 hits, 4 runs, none of them earns, which we'll talk about in a second here. 1 walk, 10 Ks, 1 home run, which now, Dan, when you read that stat line and you see the 1 home run, 0 earned runs, does your mind not like do a quick double take to try and like figure out, wonder how that all came together?
Yeah, it does take a minute to make those jibe, but the Twins, they score their runs early in this. The bottom of the second, they have a Larnach single, a Santana single, a Jeffers RBI single, Farmer with the big 3-run home run, the hero of the day, backing up the sausage, and it's 4-0.
4-0, Dan. Kyle Farmer, what a guy. Bottom of the third, Twins continue to add more runs. Matt Wallner with a solo home run. Now, here's what happened, Dan. This man hit this home run, and I kid you not, I turn to my buddy next to me, and I tell him, distance on that, I bet 444.
Oh, so you called it after the home run had been hit. I thought
Correct.
when you texted that, you called that he was going to hit a home run that was 444 feet. Okay.
No. He hit the home run, and I thought, man, he really got a hold of that one. And I nailed the distance, Dan, which I would argue is pretty impressive.
That is. I mean, it's like a hole-in-one in golf, right? You know, every now and then it's going to happen to you.
Yeah, well, not every now and then. I don't think that many people have
Sorry,
every now and then.
that's not a good comparison.
But anyway, Larnach walks. Santana reaches on a Buckner-type error at first base by Nolan Shanuel. Then Ryan Jeffers hits a sac fly to score Trevor Larnach from third. But then Carlos Santana gets thrown out, caught between second and third. He didn't see the cutoff man, who was clearly not going to let the ball get to home. Larnach was going to score for sure. So some poor base running there. I don't know if that's on Watkins or Santana.
It's probably on Watkins. Everything can be blamed on Tommy Watkins, I think, on the base paths.
That's probably accurate. But then top of the fifth, things are going well at this point. Pablo's cruising. There's 2 outs with the runner on first. And then Bryce Teodosio reaches on an Eddie Julian error, which, Dan, my goodness, here's the thing. It wouldn't have been so bad if he just bobbled the ball. And it wouldn't have been so bad if he just bobbled the ball and then he double clutched. But Dan, that man bobbled the ball and then clutched it so many times, I found myself asking, how many clutches does it take Eddie Julian to throw to first base? He was the owl in those commercials where the owl's licking the Tootsie Pop. Throw the ball, Eddie, throw the ball.
Ogres are like onions.
The one defense that I have for him is that the umpire was right between him and the baseball.
What?
And so
What is this
potentially that threw him
obsession
off.
you have with defending guys based on where the umpires are?
Because there's another explanation besides the fact that Eddie Julian is a bad second baseman.
I would argue all of the evidence points contrary to what you just said, Dan Thompson.
No, but if somebody was hitting a baseball at you and there was a person 6 feet in front of you, wouldn't it be a little bit harder to field the baseball?
Yeah, but all of this happened after he fielded it, Dan.
I know, but still, I'm just saying initially.
No, not I know, but still. No, argument over. Problem solved. It's not, he didn't miss it because the umpire was there. He had the ball in his hand. That's like me saying I dropped my kid because my wife was in front of me when I picked the kid up 20 minutes ago. What are you talking about?
All right, well, in any case, it leads to some problems here because then Pablo forgets. It's like Pablo thought he had the out and then it didn't matter if he just threw pitches down the middle, because then the Angels have 2 guys reach, including a Zach Neto 3-run home run to deep center. So it's 6-4 all of a sudden, and Eddie Julian keeps walking towards Pablo saying, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Now, this is, okay, I understand how earned runs work. Let's start there. But my goodness, Dan, Pablo Lopez gave up a deep home run to center field, and that run doesn't count against him. How does not at least one of those runs, I understand the whole idea is this inning should have been over. Nothing is going to happen here anymore. But there's got to be some blame to give to Pablo here. You gave up a 450-foot home run to center, and you're like, well, it's not really my fault.
Doesn't count. Doesn't count. It's not his guy. Should never have happened. It is a little weird. I will admit. But the Twins are able to get a couple back on a key 2-run home run by Santana following a Larnach walk. So it's 8-4 in the bottom of the fifth. And then in the top of the sixth, Julian's previous error is made up for by somebody else, Deshaun Kersey, making a wonderful diving catch.
I love how it took Dan a long time to figure out who this guy is in center and what his name is. He's like,
he's such a good center fielder. He is so much better. Where has Deshaun Kersey been? Why do the Twins think that he's not worthy of playing when they're trotting out Castro and Martin and Margot in center field? Like, my goodness, he's right there in front of you. He's under your nose, gentlemen, just down the green line.
Well, a couple of things here. First of all, it was fun to watch him get his first hit. We were there. I was one of the first people up. I don't want to say I'm a better parent than his parents, but I was standing before they were. I saw them down. They were sitting in a section a little lower than us. I'm joking. Clearly, my goodness, people. But so I will not understand that man's batting stance for as long as I live, Dan. So he gets in what I would call a typical batting stance, and you're thinking, oh, this makes a lot of sense. And then he's like, but I'm not done. You know how some of those pitchers, like a Nestor Cortez or those guys who sort of switch the way that they come set on the mound, like Kersey's kind of like that, where he changes his set position. So he gets in a normal batting stance, and then he's like, but hang on, now I'm gonna squat down 2 feet. It's like, why are you doing that, Deshaun? Stand up. You were in a perfectly fine stance a minute ago. What are you doing? It's embarrassing watching you do this.
Don't you have complaints about Brooks Lee's batting stance too?
Well, that was more Hogues, but Hogues, it's true. Like, that's not. But have you seen this? Have you watched him do this? It's the weirdest
yeah. I mean,
thing.
it is a little bit awkward. It's like a full transformation
Yeah,
mid pitch.
Like, you would think Kevin Youkilis had a weird batting stance, but at least it's like consistent, right? It's not like he starts weird and then gets into a normal stance. It's like Kersey's like, you know what? I'm going to start normal and then get weird.
Well, in any case, he does make great defensive plays, and it just makes me remember what this looks like here to have somebody playing good defense.
Yeah, and then Brooks Lee actually followed that up with a phenomenal play, diving stop, and then throwing out Logan Ohape. And it's just, it's fun to watch Brooks Lee at his natural position of shortstop making plays.
And then the bottom of the sixth, the Twins add a couple more farmer walks. Julian gets a single, and then Matt Wallner hits a 2-run double high off the center field wall. We know that either he hits, 444-foot home runs or deep doubles, and so that gives him a little bit more cushion. And then Louis Varland, in a much better role for Louis Varland, pitches the 8th and the 9th, gets into a little trouble in the 9th, allows a run, but finishes the job, and he hit 100 miles an hour on the radar gun. It's like, Rocco, duh. Like, you should have been doing this a long time ago.
I don't know how much of this is on Rocco, though. Like, I think somebody had to have a serious conversation with Louis Varland. Like, dude, you used up your maximum number of curse words you can use as a starter, so either you got to clean up your act, or you got to move to the bullpen. And
but, like, it's not his call. It can't be his call. Like, does he get to say, no, I mean, he's not Max Kepler, who just gets to decide he's only going to play right field, isn't it? Does he have the clout to say, no, guys, I really would rather start?
Well, no, I don't think it's clout. I think it's him saying, I want to be a starter, and if you guys don't want me to be a starter, then move me.
Yeah, I guess that's probably true. He could. It's just, it takes a lot of ego to be able to do that, I think, right?
Well, I don't know how much of it is ego if your whole life is built up to you being a starter, and like everybody knows as soon as you make that move to the bullpen, you don't come back. Like, it doesn't happen.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Well, let's go to game 3. This was a fun one too. The Twins win this game 6-4. Kind of a cool moment with a pregame flyover that included a whole bunch of Jack's family members. And this is an article you can read on the Star Tribune. So Captain Parker Jacks, who is the younger brother of the Twins reliever, and then Parker's wife, Chandler Jacks, also a captain, flew 2 of the 4 F-35 Lightnings that buzzed the stadium in a flyover. And then Captain Carson Jacks, Parker's twin brother, which if you're able to keep track of this, I'm very impressed, stood on the mound where Jacks regularly is there and then threw the ceremonial first pitch to Griffin Jacks, who was being catcher. And then I think the coolest part is that Griffin Jacks went out and played a key role later in this game.
Who's on first?
Yeah, exactly. It's very confusing. Yes. Carlos Santana. He's on first.
Okay. Good deal. Top of the first, Taylor Ward hits a leadoff home run. Zebby Matthews doesn't look good. We'll talk about him later. It's 1-0 Angels. Bottom of the first, Wallner answers with a home run into the bullpen. First one not to right field this year, which again, I think has to be by accident because there's no way that he's doing that on purpose. But it's a 1-1 tie game. Top of the third, another long ball. This one by Nolan Shanuel. Lets Angels retake the lead 2-1. And then bottom of the fourth, finally, Dan, runners at first and second. Twins get 2 clutch hits. A single by Castro, which, and and then a double by Lee. So the Twins are going to lead 4-2. But Castro's single, Dan, I was looking, does it not look like his bat? Like he took a bat up there that's like 3 inches shorter than what he would normally use? I'm not joking. It looked so funny. I thought he was like, I thought something was going on in my mind, how small that bat looked.
I mean, I think when you're mired in a slump like Castro has been, you got to switch it up, and maybe that's what he was doing. Well, and then the top of the 5th, Caleb Thielbar comes in, still on the roster. He lets guys get to first and third, which seems kind of usual. Alcala comes in to kind of clean up the mess. He throws 1 pitch, and then Vasquez, who's just off the paternity list, throws out Mickey Moniak trying to steal second to end the threat. And it was like, it's about time.
As if you did something right.
Do you know, Dan, that every time that man has a baby, he wins a World Series?
Is it really true?
It's true. It's true. He's got 2 kiddos, I guess, and each of them was born the year that the team that he was with won the World Series.
And you're teasing me saying that the children have nothing to do with it in this situation, this organization. I say this
I'm not superstitious, but I am a little stitious.
Maybe a little bit. Top of the 6th, the Angels get their 3rd home run of the game. Jordan Adams first. I believe the first of his career. Makes it 4-3. And then things start to turn back the Twins' way again. Bottom of the 6th, Royce Lewis snaps an 0-for-22 streak with kind of a soft single to left. It's a foretaste then, because in the bottom of the 7th, the Twins load him up, and with 2 outs, Royce Lewis comes up and seems to hit a grand slam. Would have been his 7th of his career. It's reviewed. It turns out it just went off the padding right at the top of the wall in left field. So it's a double, but it's a key double, because then it becomes 6-3. The Twins needed that. And then they get some good pitching out of Griffin Jacks and kind of a shaky outing out of Duran in the 9th.
Yeah, so Griffin Jacks goes 1-2-3 in the 7th and the 8th. We'll have to talk a little bit more about sort of the luck that worked in Rocco's favor here for that to go down that way. But Duran allows first 2 hitters to reach on singles, and then he gets 2 strikeouts. Then he allows another hit, which allows a run to score, so now it's 6-4, but he gets Michael Stefanik to ground out to Lee at short for the final out, and we all exhaled.
Yeah, and so in the standings here, the Twins are still in 3rd in the Central. The Guardians still lead it at 84-62. The Royals are 4.5 back. They're 80-67. The Twins are 6 games back from the Guardians, so a game and a half back from the Royals. At 78-68, they're back 10 over, and they still have the 3-game lead in the wild card over the Tigers, which we're going to talk more about them in Herbie's headlines. But that gap, your ticket to Essen, David, it's don't let it burn a hole in your pocket just yet.
I keep thinking I got to pick up that English to German handbook so I know what I'm doing.
All right, well, let's move forward here. We have our segments still to do.
Catch 'em all, Kirby Puckett! Puckett's Picks winner.
I have to congratulate you. It happened. You've reached double digits. Congratulations. So Dan took Wallner, who had 11 points.
Kiss the cows.
I come in second with Lee with 2. Hogs took Lewis, who had 1. The listeners who just cannot catch a break take Jose Miranda, who scores -1 point on the series, Dan.
And look at these standings. I have now passed the listeners on the season standings. I have 11 points. Listeners have 10. Hogs has 16. My victory was to Hogs' detriment and to your aid, David, because you have 22.5 points. You're sitting very pretty right now. Hogs needs to win in landslides here to finish out. You could almost take your victory lap.
I think next series, if anybody wins but Hogs, and if Hogs wins even without the bonus, I come away with the season victory, certainly.
Taking all the drama out of it. All right, let's go on here to Beast versus Bench.
Beast versus Bench.
Is losing fun? Is losing fun?
So Matt Wallner, we just talked about him a little bit, the 2 home runs, but I'm really encouraged by that one to left center. It was the first home run of the season that he has not hit to right field. It was still deep. I think it was 435 feet. When we said it before, when he connects, it is the most beautiful swing. I think he said he had a pretty funny comment too, kind of self-deprecating himself for like all of the strikeouts and the times he doesn't hit baseballs, and I appreciate kind of that levity that he has. But man, can you imagine, we're going to talk about Buxton and Correa a little bit later, when you bring those guys back and if they can be hitting pretty well, suddenly Matt Wallner is protected in this lineup and he's going to get even more good pitches to hit.
We're about to begin bonding adamantium to weapon exoskeleton.
I am wondering, what's the ratio milk to adamantium? Do you think, what's the perfect ratio? It's tricky.
Because you want both, right? You want good bone structure and also,
exactly.
adamantium, right? It's just right next to each other.
Good on top of good is just great, Dan.
Who do you got?
I gotta go to Kyle Farmer. Dan, I don't know what to tell you. The guy has played a large role in the resurgence of this team in games 2 and 3, and to pretend as though the levity he brought to the clubhouse, bringing back the rally sausage, I think is foolish. I think it made a big difference.
Hold on, but do you think so which was more important, him bringing back the rally sausage or him hitting a 3-run home run in the bottom of the second inning of Game 2?
Oh, the 3-run home run.
Okay.
But he goes 4 for 9 with 4 RBI, Dan, and he looked decent. And again, he always plays well defensively outside of that play at first base in that last Royals series, which I don't really want to talk about, but apparently it's just burned into my mind here, Dan. But Kyle Farmer, my goodness, have a day.
Well, and as for bench, I went with Festa. His pitch location was not great. This was a key game. He has good stuff, but when you're playing one of the worst teams in baseball, you just can't do this, right? You can't give up 4 runs in the first few innings. Like, you have to give your team a chance. He only gave them the 4 innings. Now, Lopez was great in Game 2 and gave him 7, so it kind of gave the bullpen a little bit of rest. But darn, you really wanted to come out and with a statement, and that was not the statement you wanted to make, David Festa.
No, really frustrating here, and even more concerning, Dan, when we look forward to the postseason a bit later. But I got to go with Julian. He goes 1 for 8, especially that error in Game 2 that allowed 4 runs to score. That, again, apparently are all earned to Eddie Julian, not
Does he
Pablo
have an
Lopez.
ERA? Maybe we should give Eddie his own ERA.
That would be something. You give earned runs to the guy who committed the error that allowed the unearned runs against the pitcher to score. It's a whole
That's
new
got to do
stat,
something
man.
with your wins above replacement, right? When
What's
you have
the,
all those.
You know how sabermetrics is sort of like the highbrow? Like,
Sure.
What would be the lowbrow? Because that's what we're getting to at this point, Dan. So that being said, let's go ahead. Let's keep pushing here into Rocco's Rewind.
Rocco's Rewind.
You know, I should have said, speaking of lowbrow, that would have been a better transition.
Well, so we're both looking at Game 3 here. I actually thought that Rocco handled Game 3 pretty well, knowing that you have an off day on Thursday. It was kind of all arms on deck. I mean, because look at the guys that he used here in Game 3. He used Zebby Matthews only gave him 3 1/3. We're going to talk about him later. Sands, who actually got his 7th win. Then Thielbar, Alcala, Jax, Duran. I don't want to say that all of those are your big arms because Caleb Thielbar is in there, but it worked out pretty well. The Twins were able to hold a lead.
Well, the Thielbar point is where I take issue a little bit with Rocco's management here in Game 3. Why on earth did you not have Sands pitch 2 innings in Game 3? I was very surprised to see Sands up, but if you're going to have him up, have him throw a couple innings. I mean, especially looking at the stat line, Dan, he only threw 16 pitches. Like, let him out there again. You're going to need another inning somewhere, and I'd rather have a tired Cole Sands than a fresh Caleb Thielbar any day of the week. Well, and further, Dan, looking at this, how friggin' lucky did Rocco get that it took Jax like 3 pitches to get out of the 7th inning? I was so annoyed because I'm thinking, okay, so who's going 2 now? You brought Jax in, so he must be planning to do the 7th and the 8th. And the only thing I can think, Dan, is Rocco told him, like, you cannot throw a lot of pitches. You have to make sure these are quick outs. You have to keep them in the zone. You can't be working counts here. And I just think how lucky, Dan, that it worked out that he only threw, like, again, I think it was actually like 7 pitches in that inning, though, so he could do 2.
He has been a revelation this year, and I know he was good. Remember, he was a starter. Louis Varland, look at this. Look what your life could be like. You could be like Griffin Jax here. I mean, his ERA is under 2. Clearly the most consistent, dare we say the most consistent pitcher on the entire Twin staff this season?
I think bullpen, obviously. I think maybe, Bailey Ober, it's just he has those sort of weird, terrible starts every now and again. So I guess, yeah, if we're using consistency as the measure, you're probably accurate.
All right, let's move on here to the Minnesota moment.
Minnesota moment.
Well, I got to go Game 2, bottom 2, the return of the sausage, obviously, and Kyle Farmer's 3-run home run. I just think that as silly as it is, Dan, and I'm not a big believer in like, the momentum and the clubhouse guys and stuff, but as much as I say that shouldn't matter as much as some guys make it out to matter, I do think there's something to be said when a team is wound up as tightly as this Twins team is, as far as how terrible they've been playing. It doesn't even seem like they're playing terribly because they're stressed. It's like they're just sort of ambivalent about like what's happened to the season. And I think just making them have a little bit of fun, at least, to know that like you're a playoff baseball team right now. I think it's a great reminder to this team that, hey, you're still playing for stuff. You're not the White Sox, for crying out loud.
Yeah, I think it took a reset, right? To say you're not going to coast into the playoffs anymore, but you can still be a playoff team with hopefully getting a couple guys back here soon to kind of be more full force. They don't have the starting pitching right now. The rookies are a little bit falling apart. I had so much faith in, but they can get them there. And I think we're gonna talk more about that later. My moment has got to be Game 3, bottom 7. Lewis's near grand slam, because for goodness sake, this guy needs to be better. Buxton is actually coming back. He's going to be activated on Friday with sending down Austin Martin. Let's say Buxton can be healthy again. Now you've got 2 of your big 3 back. The band's getting back together.
Yeah, that segues well into my Mauer's musings.
I just don't know how it can get any better.
Mauer's musings.
I just think with the way that Correa has been talking the last couple of days, is there not a chance that they just surprise us and they activate him for this weekend as well?
Absolutely. The way that he had kind of been hinting at like he might be coming back soon, I don't think you need to give the guy a rehab start. They've brought in these pitchers from the lower minors to come and pitch to these guys and kind of give them that live BP, which quite honestly, isn't that kind of as good as going and doing a minor league stint right now?
I think it's better. No travel, and you can see a ton of at bats instead of 3 or 4 in a 3-hour stint. You can take 10 or 11 at bats in the same time frame.
Well,
absolutely.
I mean, let's be honest. The owners of the baseball team must love it, right? Because they don't have to buy any first-class plane tickets.
Yeah, that's what's at play here, Dan.
That's really why.
But I was trying to figure this out, Dan, and I realize that this is normally your field of study. But here I am. I was so curious because Carlos Correa has been going through this new treatment for the plantar fasciitis, and there's like apparently 4 different options for what people can do. That's like outpatient, so you're not actually going under the knife to do it. But if I'm understanding what they're doing,
I don't believe that man's ever been to medical school.
and I'm certain that I don't. There's only a few options of what this treatment could be that the second opinion doctor gave to Correa.
Hold on, what did you do to find this information?
I was in the deep, Dan. I was in the deep drawers of WebMD trying to find the answers here. But so I found an article about sort of alternative treatments for plantar fasciitis, and especially for chronic plantar fasciitis. And a lot of people go through a surgery to like just cut the tendon completely, and then it'll regrow. Actually, it'll be lengthened, and so it's less likely to cause pain and tear. Now, what I think they're doing is they have sort of a outpatient microscopic version of that, where they actually go in and they make tiny incisions into the plantar fasciitis area in order to ensure that muscle can't tear, and it just keeps elongating. So Correa said it's really painful, the procedure itself, but it helps so much. So I have to think that's what they're doing. They're doing something to literally cut the plantar fasciitis, or what? I don't even know. Is it the plantars or the fasciitis?
It's the fascia. The fascia is being cut. Yeah.
They're cutting the fascia in tiny increments so that Correa can come back because it's not going to tear, when he wakes up and he walks on it.
I think I know what they're actually doing.
We're about to begin bonding adamantium to weapon exoskeleton.
See, that's what they're doing. He's getting the Wolverine treatment down in California.
Can you imagine, like, he runs to first base, and like every step he takes with his right foot, it's just like 4 inches into the ground. The ground crew has to keep coming out to like refill the holes.
Oh, well, we don't know, but we hope that it's working. We hope that he comes back here. Speaking of pain levels, so what would be a tolerable final 3 starts by Zebby Matthews? I think he's only going to make 3 more. Like, what do you think?
I don't know, Dan. All I know is that he didn't look good today. 3 1/3 innings pitched, 5 hits, 2 earned runs. And I have to be honest, Dan, if this was a better team, they put up at least 5 runs because they missed some balls that they should have hit out, no question. And I think the part of this start in particular that frustrated me to such an extent that I was like literally seething under my breath was the leadoff homer that Zebby gave up, and just the sheer look of confusion and how baffled he was that this was even a possibility that this guy hit this out for a homer.
We never thought he was really that ready, right? I mean, like the Twins only pressed him into duty because they have nobody else. So, and we should say, I mean, Puckett is out. Joe Ryan is out. Desclafani, you remember him, hasn't pitched. So it's like,
how can you remember a guy who never threw a pitch?
I know. Well, it's a philosophical question. So anyway, so we hope that Zebby can kind of limp through. Maybe they could win one of his starts for the rest of the way. And
if
I think
the
that
offense
would be
kicks
okay.
up, it's possible. I don't know that he'll get a decision though. I think that's going to be
well,
like,
of course not. He's not going 5. There's
no
way
way
he's going to finish it up.
Like, I think that if he can get through 4 and only give up 3 runs or something, I guess that's going to be reasonable. But I don't think you can expect much more than that. And again, I don't mean to disparage a guy who shouldn't be at this level yet. But it's sort of like, when you let a kid play a game that the kid doesn't really know how to play and he's not going to play well. That's what's happening here. And it's not Zebby Matthews' fault. Like, he should be pitching at AA and then AAA next season, and then he's going to come up. But you can't, you pushed him to the majors. It's just too fast.
Yeah, I agree. All right, let's go on here. Grade it.
Series grades.
I'm going to give him a B, Dan. Sort of looking forward, thinking that game 2 was clearly a reset. Hopefully the team's awake. Buxton's coming back. Hopefully Correa's coming back. Royce Lewis has broken out of his slump. Brooks Lee has broken out of his slump. Willie Castro has sort of broken out of his slump. Christian Vasquez has broken back into his slump. So like things are getting back to normal, Dan, on this roster. And so I do think that a B is a reasonable grade for taking 2 of 3 at home, especially when you've been struggling to such an extent.
Mine's lower. So advanced retreat, I just gave it a 6 out of 10 because they so badly could have used a sweep here just to give a little bit more, because the Reds are not going to be pushovers. You look what's coming up after that. Then you got the Guardians and the Red Sox, the Marlins, the Orioles. Like, this was obviously one of the softer parts of their schedule. So to take 2 out of 3, I just didn't think was good enough. But well-played baseball, I think overall they played pretty well. You mentioned all these guys busting out of slump, so I gave them an 8 out of 10 there. 14 out of 20, that's a C-.
All right, well, let's keep pushing here. Let's look around the league in Herbie's headlines.
I don't know, Jack. It looked like Herbeck pulled him off the bag.
Herbie's headlines.
Well, I have to start with the Ohtani update. So he is now up to 47 home runs, 48 stolen bases. And again, he's trying to push to become the first ever 50-50. You didn't get a chance to respond to my Ohtani judge line, but I think you would have said something in the last episode.
Dan, that was the only line in the last podcast that I think truly, it wasn't because of my illness that I had to go to the bathroom. It was because of that line. I couldn't believe that those words came out of your mouth, that you said you want a Dodgers Yankees
I didn't
World
say
Series.
I wanted it. I said if that's what comes to pass, then so be it, and that could be entertaining to see. That's what I said.
You know, Dan, if you're going to send your guys out to die from Gondor, that's fine. But don't count me among the soldiers.
You don't want to be part of that fight? Anyway, thank you. A nice Lord of the Rings illusion.
I thought you'd appreciate that.
We should point out, so the Tigers, who are now the Twins' #1 competition here, which way to go AL Central, right? Putting 4 teams in the playoff hunt. Thank you, White Sox, for being 33 and 114.
I don't know if you've noticed this, Dan, but the AL Central is below 500 as a whole, but 4 of the teams are above 500, which is a pretty impressive feat.
I want to read the games back here. So Guardians lead the division. The Royals are 4.5 back. The Twins are 6 games back. The Tigers are 9 back. And the White Sox are 51.5 games back. The gap from the 4th team to the 5th team, you can't tell me it's ever been that vast.
Well, I think what's even more impressive, Dan, have you looked at the run differentials?
No.
Okay, so Cleveland plus 79, Kansas City plus 95. Don't look. Have you looked?
No.
Okay, good. Twins plus 41, Detroit Tigers plus 36. What do you think the Chicago White Sox run differential is?
It's got to be like negative 250.
Negative 311, which I'm not sure I've ever seen with baseball left to be played, Dan.
Oh my
That
gosh.
is insane. I think you can almost take the rest of the divisions in baseball. Oh, no. Shoot, the Marlins are so terrible. Otherwise, I think you could, and the Rockies. If you take out the Marlins and the Rockies, the White Sox could take care of every other division in baseball's bottom feeder for the run differentials. Like, that is just sheer impressive, Dan.
Well, interestingly, the Tigers actually have a really tough stretch here, but a key stretch for them. They play the Orioles for a series, then the Royals, and then the Orioles again. They could either make up a lot of distance and I guess bring those teams back closer to the Twins, or they could fall out of it completely and kind of give it to the Twins anyway.
Yeah, I think the Orioles, knowing how much they're going to have to push if they want to get a high seed against the Yankees as it stands currently, I think that the Tigers are going to have a lot to deal with those Orioles who are, honestly, they want every win so badly that I just don't see the Tigers being the team to topple them.
All right, well, let's look forward here to this Reds series with our Puckett's picks.
And we'll see you tomorrow night. Puckett's picks.
So the listeners are going to take Wallner, which obviously at this point, I mean, that just makes a ton of sense. Hogs is going to go with Lewis. Then it comes to me. I mean, Wallner was the obvious pick, certainly. I think I'm going to go with Santana. I think that he's been consistent. I'm just a little bit maybe turned off because the last time I picked him, he did so poorly, and then the next series he did well. So I'm just really frustrated. So I assume in this next series, he should put up like 30 points, Dan.
And didn't his illness kind of correspond with yours there? You know, like...
Yeah, truly. And if they were dealing with what I was dealing with, I do not blame them at all for not playing baseball, Dan.
That leaves a lot of choices to me. You know, know what? If Buxton's coming back, I'm just going to take Buxton. Why not?
Who knows, Dan? It may be the best decision you've ever made. I'm excited. I'm going to the game on Friday night. I hope to see. Okay, I want the Twins to win. I also want to see De La Cruz steal a base. Like,
totally. Absolutely. Okay, for sure.
You know, and like make it a good steal, like a second to third, but then he doesn't score or something like that. You know, I want to see it. I want to see how fast it looks live. But yes, I do hope the Twins win, obviously.
Well, I have been sending us out a lot here, David, so I think it's your turn.
Will do. Well, folks, if you like what you hear, please tell a friend. You can follow us on X at Min for the Win and find our Min for the Win Facebook and Instagram pages. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast platform so that you're notified when new episodes are available. And if you could leave us a rating or a like, we'd greatly appreciate it. If you'd like to support the show further, you can find us on Patreon. Link in the description. Thanks for listening, and as always, go Twins.
That'll wrap up another episode of Min for the Win, a podcast hosted by David Kuvis and Dan Thompson, two avid fans who appreciate well-played baseball, especially when it's done by the Twins. Thanks so much for listening, and as always, go Twins.